I'm doing this raw. My brains are pickled right now, and if I don't do this the way I'm doing it, I'm never going to do it. And this is a story I really need to preserve. It's part of my family history, it's part of my life story. And as you can see from the title, it wasn't a good story, but I'm still going to vent because I have a lot of friends on YouTube and I can't do this individually. And so this is not art, this is art therapy because sometimes when you're stressed, you just have to have your hands moving and coloring. And I don't care if I'm blended, I don't care if my colors do not go together. I'm just doing this for therapy. I had a really bad night last night, and I'm going to tell you guys the story, and I'm going to just begin. I told you guys last week that my husband was in the hospital and he came home. But I didn't tell you guys that about 4 days later, he went back in, and he's been there ever since. Now, I didn't talk too much about what's wrong with him, because basically he's got a heart condition called cardiomyopathy, and he was born with one kidney, so that was like from birth. He had destined to have kidney disease. He developed an infection, and it overwhelmed his body, sepsis. So they had him on antibiotics. This is the history of they had him on antibiotics. He got out of the hospital. He seemed to have been doing better, and then he just crashed. It was, I don't know, a couple of days ago, whenever he went back into the hospital, the night before, he just developed a really super high fever, and I thought I saw him have a seizure. My thoughts about the seizure were confirmed by a doctor witnessing it and yesterday, and it's not like a seizure where it's a neurological seizure. His blood pressure dropped. Well, it happened in front of that doctor yesterday, and they put the hospital on guard with him. They were watching it a little bit more closely. And then last night, he said goodnight to me, and he said, I don't feel that great, I'm going to sleep. And I was like, okay, good night. And I just had this really horrible, horrible, horrible feeling. And about an hour later, I tried to call him again, and there was no answer. And that was like, okay, he's sleeping. So I didn't panic or anything like that. He fell asleep. I mean, he's tired. Apparently, the infection was never completely eradicated. Still has the infection. So that's what he's in the hospital for. Well, about 20 minutes later, I missed a phone call, and it was the hospital calling. And let me tell you something. When the hospital calls you at night, it's never good. I can tell you that for a fact. Having been on the medical side and the receiving side, it is never a good thing. And so I knew something bad, really bad was happening. And the phone number that they gave to call back was not answering. So, of course, everything is going through my head, and I started to panic, and nobody in the house was home. My father was home, but he was sound asleep. My kids were all out. Fortunately, four of them were at my daughter's house. Well, two of them plus my other my daughter. They were watching. They have like a series that they watch together. So I called back the hospital, and I finally got them on the line, and it was a nurse, and she said, "Your husband took a turn for the worse." And I was like, "Okay." I was preparing myself for whatever they have to say. And she goes, "I need you to understand this." I said, "Okay." She goes, "Do you know about the blood pressure situation?" And I was like, "Yes." She goes, "Well, it happened again, but his heart stopped. And they're working on him." She called me when my husband was in a full code. So basically, he died. I knew what the everything she said meant. I got off the phone with her and immediately started getting dressed and ready to go to the hospital. My brain, I don't I don't know what was lifting me up to be able to do this, but I was calm, cool and collected. I called up one of my children's boyfriends who, they live here, so I called them and I said, "You have to come home." And I didn't tell them why. I said, "Howie's not feeling good. He wants me to come down to the hospital." And he said that, the nurses don't come into him. They're very busy and they don't come into him as fast as he would like it. And he needs help. Which I thought was a very good excuse because it's very, very valid these days. Nurses are overwhelmed. So they said they would come home and one of the boys were going to drive me over to the hospital. So in the meantime, my other daughter's boyfriend, my daughter, one of my daughters was working, wasn't calling her, and one of my daughter's boyfriends just happened to be home. And he had gone out to pick up some like fast food when this happened, and he walked in the door. I was like, "You got to get me to the hospital." And I told him the truth about what was going on. So of course, he did a momentary panic. We have a tight family, and we went into the car. In fact, he was faster getting to the car than even I was. I wasn't even that fast. And we go driving down to the hospital. Now, I did not expect my husband to be alive, to be perfectly honest. The code is you die. If they get you back, they get you back. It's usually not a good thing. More than likely, you are gone. So I was fully preparing myself for them when I got to the hospital, to tell me that my husband was gone and we were going to pick up his phone and whatever. It was the weirdest sensation. My head was very level-headed, very calm, and I kept hearing in my voice, "The way you react is the way your children are going to react. If you panic, your children will panic. If they see a strong person, then they will be strong and they will take comfort." So in my head, I'm being very, very calm. In fact, I didn't even cry. I didn't fall apart. And when I got to the hospital, I got to the emergency room where you have to go at night. And the first person that I came in contact with was the security. You have to pass security, I guess, all the COVID screening stuff that they have to do for you to be able to get into the hospital. And they called up, nice woman, they called up, all the places that my husband may be in the hospital, located him. He was in the intensive care unit. And I was like, "Great, where do I go?" They were like, "You can't go up there." It's like, "What? You can't go?" I was upset about that. But what I'm forgetting to tell you that I need to say is I couldn't even grasp in my head he was still alive, because for the past hour I had thought my husband was dead. So they said he's awake, he's alert. Would I like to? He's awake and alert, but he's sleeping. Would I like for them to wake him up and I could talk to them? And I was like, "No, don't wake him up. If he's sleeping like normally, don't disturb him. He obviously has been through a big trauma tonight. Don't." So we were turned away from the hospital, which I kind of understand, but I don't understand. Like if I was in a stronger frame of mind last night, I might have argued it more, that if he codes again, it's going to be my last chance. You know the whole speech, but I didn't. For whatever reason, I didn't have the strength. I When they told me that he was still alive, I fainted in the ER. It wasn't a full faint. Like, I can hear everything that was going on around me, but obvious, like, it wasn't obvious to me, but nobody can hear me speak. So I didn't even realize I was only talking in my head, and not talking to people. So I guess they realized that I was pale and fading fast. And the next thing I know is my son in law had his hand on my back, and I call him my son in law because that's what he's going to be. Um, and my one of the nurses there, I guess they pulled over a chair until I was able to then speak out loud instead of just in my head. So we came home, and in the car we decided we were not telling my other kids. And even though they had a right to know, they weren't going to be allowed at the hospital. So it wasn't like if my husband passed away and they would have had a chance to say goodbye to him, they weren't letting us up. It's the whole COVID thing. I can't fight that. It's not happening. So I wanted to wait until the morning, and before I, you know, or if something happened at night, I would have, there was no reason to tell them in the middle of the night, that late, and just get them crazy. Well, that lasted a whole 5 minutes because we both said, okay, we're not telling, not telling. And the second my daughters came into the house, the boys, because at this point, both of the boys knew and the girls didn't, and they blabbed, like they were like, we can't not tell, they can't lie to my daughters, and I can't. They were worried about me being mad, but you know what? I feel better that they couldn't lie to my kids, because that tells me a little bit more about their relationship with my daughters. Like, if they were able to lie very easily, it would have been a little bit worse than they couldn't keep a secret from my children. So I can't say that I'm not happy with that. I just didn't go the way I wanted it to go, but it went. And my daughters found out. Two of them did. I have reasons that I didn't want to call my third daughter and tell her, which makes sense, but it's not something I want to talk about. So I had to keep it a little bit of a secret from my other one temporarily. And so this is when it gets really weird. If it wasn't weird enough. So now I think my husband is dead. He came back to life. I fainted. I came home, had the conversation, and got extremely sleepy. And I guess it was the adrenaline in me that knocked me out. I mean, you would think, I was thinking to myself, I'm never falling asleep tonight. And I fell hard asleep. And for me, it was fairly easy, like early. So when I woke up this morning, I had no phone calls at night, which is a good thing. And I had a text message from my husband. And my daughter, one of my daughters, had called him in the middle of the night. I guess she couldn't help herself, and she called him and spoke to him. So I got that all in text message when I woke up, so I knew I was not facing a bad situation when I got up and went to the hospital today. So when I went there, this is when it gets really, really weird. I go, he's in the ICU, and I go there, and I expected my husband. I mean, I almost lost him. And you have my permission to laugh at this because sure the heck when this is over, I'm going to. I'm going to get a lot of mileage out of this one too. When I got there, he was yelling at me, which is typical my husband, for me to explain to the nurse in no uncircum terms, like he is just not going to use a bedpan. Not, oh my God, we almost lost each other. He was angry. He was not going to. I had to explain it to the nurse. It was not happening. So I'm going to get a lot of mileage out of that someday. So I'm sitting there with him after I, you know, came in, calmed him down, and was like, okay, what is going on? And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, how do you feel? And he's like, I'm tired. And I'm like, well, you were through a lot last night. And he's looking at me like confused. And he's like, you know what? I can't cough today. My chest is tight. Like not my chest being tight. It was like my ribs hurt. And I'm like, well, they were doing CPR on you. And he looked at me in the strangest way, like, what? I'm like, the CPR they did on you. They were pounding on your chest. He was clueless that he had died the night before. And I expected today for him to have tubes and things coming. He had a blood pressure machine on his arm. He had his IVs going with nothing special in them to hold up his blood pressure or anything. There was nothing there that was all that telltale signs that something was wrong. He had no idea. I was the first person to tell him what had happened. He had very little memory of it. If not, I could describe no memory of it. He was trying to piece it together after I told him, like, I need to remember this. And I'm like, yeah, I can remember it for both of us because I'm never going to forget it. And it was so surreal after thinking he was gone and I was never going to talk to him again. And, you know, he's the love of my life. I mean, I've been with him since I was 14. To have gotten, and I'm going to cry at this, and I haven't cried yet, mind you. I'm going to cry saying this. You know how, okay. See, I knew that venting would bring it out of me. You know how when somebody passes away, and you say, I just want one more day to say the things that I should have said before. And I got my day. I had a whole day with my husband today. And hopefully many more. But we were able to say things to each other and talk to each other about, I don't know, our lives together and things we want to do and things that are going on in our lives. We were able to, you know, sit and talk. And my husband and I, we have a very good relationship, mind you. I'm not talking about two people that are trying to get it together. I have a good relationship with my husband. And I often said it's because we run separate entities of one life. Like, he does certain things in our marriage, I do certain things, and we fit together like a lock and key. Together we do it. So, or create this life together. But we don't even cook in the same room at the same time with each other because when he's cooking, it's his space, and when I'm cooking, it's my space. And we decided we were going to start sharing space a little bit more, um, and doing things together. Because not that you can ever prepare for somebody you love to be gone, but there were certain things and aspects of our life that I had no clue about, because I never had to deal with it. I don't pay the bills. My husband does. Um, I they're just I don't take care of the cars. I've never pumped gas in my life. Well, I can't say never. I've done it a few times 15 years ago. But if you were to ask me now, I've put it to you this way: I've never pumped gas in Las Vegas, and I've been here for 15, almost 16 years. Um, it's just not something that I have to do. I don't normally drive anywhere. And it's a function in our relationship that my husband does the driving. And it's always been. It was a function in my growing up that my father always drove everywhere. That was just normal. You handed your husband the keys, and I'm a little bit older than modern day, you know, things, and we definitely had our separate functions, and we're happy. Well, so I don't know what's going to go on with my husband's health. Please forgive me. I'm not really answering that much email. Um, very few people know what's going on, and if we're good friends and I didn't tell you, it is definitely not a reflection. It's timing on my emails. Like, if I have the energy, I have told people. If I was running out of steam, I haven't told people what's going on. And that's just the way it has to be. I only have so much energy in my body left. So I do want to say one thing. Sometimes you meet somebody on YouTube and they serve a purpose in your life. And I want to thank my friend Charmaine, who was sort of really always there. There's a lot of people who have been there too. But Charmaine, I just want to say that how special Charmaine is to me. And, well, that's where I'm going to leave it because I don't want this to go on forever. I've told you the story. Um, oh, there was one thing. I have to remember this too because it's going down in the history books. It was sometime this afternoon. And, oh, you know what? I forgot so much parts of this. Pickled brains. So, this is kind of funny. My husband, we're watching TV, and he turns to me and he goes, we're not married anymore. I was like, what? What are you talking about? He goes, we took vows to each other. And I was like, yeah. And we said, till death do us part. And I'm like, yeah. He goes, I died. I'm set free. I'm like, you son of a bitch. That's like so him. He's like, we're not married anymore. I'm free. And I'm like thinking about it and I'm going, I wonder what the rules are that. Do we have to get remarried? You know? This was his warped joke, not mine. Don't get mad at me. It was him who said it. But the other thing that I wanted to tell you guys, and it was a very, very, very sad day at the hospital. And even though I was a nurse, I did not go back into nursing due to um, my husband being so fragile. I had to protect him from the virus. It would have been, like, if it was just me, I would have hopped right in, into the bandwagon and done it. But I have two very high risk people in my house, my father and my husband, and that's just the way it is. So, when you go down the hallway in an intensive care unit, there's very little privacy at all there. Um, it's set up so that there's glass windows. I guess it has to be because people have to see in the room everybody's eyes, situation, kind of look in on all the patients, and then you have your primary nurse. So when you're walking down the hallway, you're not really spying on people, but if you glance in any one direction, you're going to see into the rooms. And I saw today, well, first of all, even my nurse confirmed this, that most of the people on the floor have COVID. And they were so young. I know what the media says. And, sometimes, there's hype and there's scare when it comes to the media. And there was literally, I've walked into 1,000 ICUs, 1,000 times, just in working in hospitals. And you always see older people. And then you might see an occasional younger person in there. It happens. There are people, even young get sick. But on the floor that my husband was on, I was like gasping. Everybody was on a ventilator. And everybody was young. I didn't see any older people. And I had to pass a lot of rooms to get to my husband's room. There were wards. Like, my husband has a private room. But there were rooms that were there that had multiple people in. And you could see right into the room as you're walking the hallway. So there was many bodies that were all hooked up to ventilators. They were all alone. Except for the people who were there, the workers. And it was the most horrifically sad vision I've ever had. I don't know if I'm ever going to get over and past the vision that I thought. And you know what? Everybody has their own thoughts on getting vaccinated or not getting vaccinated. But please don't make it a political decision. Don't do it because your party believes in one way or another. I really seriously don't know how this country got split from politics when it comes to health. It never should have happened. Never. We should have stood together like we did with 9/11. And everybody put out a flag, and everybody did the right thing after 9/11. There was such patriotism and such, everywhere you looked, we were all one people. We were Americans. So please, God, just don't let your decisions be delegated to you by a political party. And I mean, there's a lot of people who know what I am, and I know it's very dangerous to talk politics on YouTube, and I'll take that risk for just 1 minute, because I usually am quite quiet about it on YouTube. There's a huge rule in my Facebook group that politics are never discussed, and I went along with that rule way at the beginning. It's like the number one, don't do it, because we'll put up with a lot. You could talk about your personal life. You could talk about your Aunt Harriet who pissed you off the other day. You could talk about anything you want off topic. It's a group. Don't talk politics, because that's... And I'm not making this a political video at all. I'm just giving it to you what I saw today. And what I saw today was horrible. Just horrible. I'm scarred. I can't imagine the nurses, what they have gone through. And I talked to my husband's nurse today all day. He was such a great nurse. He really was. Nice, very nice group. And how they kept their sanity for the last year, I don't know how they did that. They just did. And it was funny because my husband's nurse got COVID twice. Well, not him, his wife, who's another nurse. He got COVID once, his wife got it twice. And now they have titers going up the yin yang so that they don't catch it again. But just make your decision on based on your own research and not what CNN or Fox News or any of the news stations out there, you know, not by what a news station says. Make it from your own heart. And with that, I think I'm going to close this down because we're going on a really long time and I don't really want to. I'm sorry I've rambled for so long. I'm venting. I'm coloring. I could do this for hours. And you'd be forced to click off my video way before this. So for those of you who are still hanging in there, listening to my sob story, I'm going to be okay. Everybody goes through ups and downs in their life. This just happens to not exactly be my best situation. Oh, another thing I need to vent about. Sorry about that. This video is never going to end. This week, we lost... Well, maybe I won't go into the whole situation, but we lost a family friend this week on top of my husband dying last night. It's been a fucked up week. A really, really fucked up week. And to the people who won the art and fly things, it's gonna come out, but it's gonna get out to you. But right now, brain is on overload, and boxing it up. I don't even have a box yet. I don't know. It'll go out to you. I promise. Sooner rather than later, because it's sitting here on my desk, and I really need to do it. So I think I'm gonna finish this picture. This is a good venting picture to do. I'm using some of my favorite color combinations. This is my little nature combos that I use all the time. But I think I'm going to do something hotter. Well, I'm glad I can add the purples in for that. I'm gonna finish this. So I will see you guys hopefully sooner more rather than later. I have a whole bunch of videos done. They just need to be edited. Unlike this one, I always keep videos tucked away for days that I don't feel like, coloring, because not every time I feel like coloring. So I always have stuff that's tucked away. So you wouldn't even have known anything was wrong or going on if I had not done this video. I have enough to put out there. But I feel really better that I vented. I'm a positive person in general. I'm not a negative person. But everybody has ups and downs. This is just, hopefully the down, and I'll have many more ups and many more ups with the only man that is for me and ever will be. So with that, I want to say good night. And I will see you guys in my next video. Take care. Bye bye.